No, wait, that's me. I was gonna say the Pisces rising needs water, but that's me.
Welcome to Growing with the Stars, a podcast we use to help you and help ourselves navigate life with astrology and, helping the planets and the stars help us navigate whatever is coming our way. Whether you need hydration or you need help with anxiety due to the state of the world. I'm Katie, a traditional astrologer, and this is Kat.
And I am not a traditional astrologer. I'm a fire sign with purpose.
I mean, you're so much more than just a fire sign, and also a water rising sign, which is what we're going to be talking about today, which are rising signs. What are they? Why do they matter? And how can knowing your rising sign help you understand your unique gifts and the things that can help you, bring those unique gifts out into the world and have more meaning in your life, especially in a world in crisis, which feels like it happens more and more every day. We are recording this in Friday, July 18th, when they have just cut funding to public television because who needs Sesame Street when billionaires can get more uh, tax cuts? That's the word.
Yeah, we wouldn't know what a tax cut is. We're not in the right bracket. So,
We're far off from that. We're going to talk about your rising sign, and how to find it and all of that. We are not probably going to go through each and every um, like delineation of like your rising sign and where the ruling planet is, but we're going to kind of give you a direction to start with today.
if we're starting then, so I guess the best place to start is what's the rising sign, Katie? What is it? Why does it matter?
Yeah, so the rising sign is I want you to imagine the moment you were born. If you were looking at the eastern horizon and could see the zodiac signs in the sky, which is the one that is rising over the horizon the moment you were born? And that's where knowing the time of your birth is really important because that they change about every 2.5 hours. Um, and this is where the ancients saw the heaven and the earth as sort of meeting, right? This is the place where sort of the idea was that, the essences were kind of coming into the body of the individual. And so we also see this as really the place of like birth, right? When you think of like the sun rising over the horizon, that is kind of like the birth of the day. So there's lots of sort of symbolism of the rising sign. And if you want to figure out your rising sign, you're going to need your birthday, your birthplace, and an exact birth time. As exact as possible. I tend to prefer birth certificates or baby books or even birth announcements can have usually the best precise dates or times, mostly because we joke in my family that my mother is convinced I was born at 2 p.m. And I have a baby book where it says 11:17 in the morning. So I trust the baby book over human memory. Human memory is just not as good. Love my mom, love you if you're listening to this, but those are the things we tend to want to lean into. And you can then calculate that online in lots of places. My favorite places to do that are astro.com or astro-seek.com. And if you don't have your birth time, like don't panic. There are astrologers who do what's called rectification, which are ways to sort of work backwards based on major events in your life to figure out what we think your birth time is to then kind of help you get a chart. And so you can also do that. Let's just say if you were adopted or if you're just kind of, there's contexts where you can't always know. So you are not left out of the lurch if that is the case for you.
So how significantly different would your rising sign be if your birth was 2 o'clock versus 11 o'clock?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny because I haven't looked at the 2 p.m. in a while. So I'm a Leo rising, Gemini sun, Sagittarius moon. All right. Now, if I was to be, say, born 3 hours later at like 2 in the afternoon, I would have Virgo as my rising sign. And so it would shift So the most like the planets haven't changed signs, but it shifts a lot of other focuses, right? It shifts who is the planet that rules the ascendant, which we can talk about, which is really personal and sort of guides the life. And it changes what houses and what topics those planets are sort of based in. Instead of having a lot of planets in my 11th house of friends, supporters, community, and groups, suddenly there's a big shift to the 10th around career, legacy, visibility, right? Sometimes those shifts can be more dramatic than others, right? If you're going from, say a Venus, let's just say you're going from Aries to Taurus rising, you're going from a Mars ruled ascendant to a Venus ruled ascendant. And those are going to be very different vibes. There's nothing wrong with either vibe, but like Mars is a fighter and Venus is a lover, and so typically there's a shift there. Um, so it can be pretty significant, and there's other more technical determinations that we might use, or sort of minor rulerships and other more advanced techniques like zodiacal releasing, where if you don't have the exact time, it's almost impossible to do it because it really depends almost to the degree where things are at to give good delineations to understand what's happening. And so, from that perspective, the rising sign is critical for the depth of analysis that you're going to get in a reading and also like the right topics, the right understanding. When you don't have the houses, you don't know where exactly things are. It's more tricky to understand. Like, hey, are you going through a financial transit or are you going through a romance transit? Both could be happening, but they're very different, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you really can't find out quite a lot without a birth time. It makes it really complicated.
Yeah. And like two people can have the same sun sign, but different rising signs, and they're gonna look, right, very different. Um, let's see if I can pull one out of my tuchus. We're gonna use we're gonna use Clint Eastwood and Johnny Depp, two very problematic men. Both have the sun in Gemini. However, and we have great time charts for both of them. They're what we call, there's a rod and rating system. Clint Eastwood, Gemini sun, but he's a Scorpio rising, which means that his Mars and Aries is much more individual. And we see that in sort of his portrayal and in his work of sort of the rugged individualism and the sort of like faux cowboy shit. You know what I mean? The Good, Bad, and the Ugly is a classic Hollywood Western with him in it that my dad would make me watch as a kid. On the other hand, you have Johnny Depp, also a Gemini sun, but he is a Leo rising, who both get the same kind of mercurial sun. But, you know, um, Johnny Depp's going to be a little bit more of a traditional celebrity. There's more of the like enjoyment of the limelight. The sun comes across much more strongly in sort of his individual aesthetic of sort of charming trickster when you think of like Pirates of the Caribbean, playing this sort of mercurial pirate. Um, and so those flavors, right, those ascendant rulers, just because they have the same sun, they can come across very, very differently. And there's lots of other things that makes their charts different, because problematic is not safe for any one zodiac sign or placement. But uh, those, the ascendant ruler tells you a lot more about the individual than typically like just any, like your sun or your moon. Sometimes, though, the sun is the ascendant ruler.
I'm really chewing on this now because my brain is like, okay, so if I'm understanding what you're saying is that with Clint Eastwood, because of his Virgo ascendant, right, he's in more of a traditional masculine, more not traditional masculine, but traditional type accepted masculine presenting role cast versus Johnny Depp gets more of those like more whimsical. They're still masculine characters, but they're more of like a, you said Mercury, they're like the trickster type.
Yeah. So,
Versus Clint Eastwood is not necessarily the trickster. He's like a very forward playing
yeah.
person. Like he might pull out like a switcheroo at the last second. I'm thinking of the scene. I think that it was from Back to the Future where he,
Mm,
there's the scene that they take from that and they use where he has the
yeah.
metal thing. right? He pulls the switcheroo, but it's in a very typical kind of everybody could do it way, whereas thinking, of a character perhaps like Jack Sparrow, who Johnny Depp is really well known for, it's kind of exaggerated. It's kind of like very like um gassed up almost.
Yeah, so Clint Eastwood's a Scorpio rising. So it's the Mars in Aries rules the ascendant. And we think about like kind of rugged individualism,
Did I say
hyper.
Virgo?
I think so.
I did.
Honestly, Mercury is retrograde as we are recording this, so please enjoy some of our snafus and Swiss cheese brain moments, which I
Please.
have always.
Yeah. It's
Um,
hitting me in all the places, so take it. Yeah.
yeah, but so when we see with Clint Eastwood, and we see a lot of that sort of Aries, hothead, doing things by myself, hyper individualism, a lot about like my masculinity is tied up in my grit and my ability to kind of rush in heads first and like be courageous and the soldier, lone wolf is very Aries coded. And so I think
Mhm.
that's what we see sort of tied to him, both in the characters he plays and sort of the persona he likes to kind of be out in the world, right? Whereas, you know, when we look at Johnny Depp as a Leo rising, the sun, that Gemini sun, is more important for him as an individual and his drive and his focus and his goals, right? There is much more about being seen and also um, leaning into. So, a sun in Gemini is going to be ruled by Mercury. It's going to have some more of these mercurial yapper vibes, as well as being willing, like part of the tricksterness of it is a willingness to sort of see it as a game, to see life as a game, and to play and bend with the rules, and in a way mocking the structures and systems and poking holes at it. And you see that a lot in, yeah, the Jack Sparrow character, where it's like, is he drunk? Is he not drunk? Right? Whose side is he playing for? What does it even mean to like, what is law and lawlessness? What is the order of it all? Is there any order? You can see him as, I mean, partially he's just playing an asshole, and also partially the asshole, if you want to look at it on a deeper level, like a lot of these sort of Mercury trickster characters, there's a deeper critique sometimes of the system. And so both have Gemini suns. They both are going to have some of that energy, but for Johnny Depp, way more important than it is for Clint Eastwood. So yeah, both can have the same sun sign, but the value of how much work the sun is doing varies. And so once you understand that, you can suddenly get a sense of like knowing your ascendant, knowing your rising sign, and knowing the planet that rules it, both where it is in your natal chart, your birth chart, and what is going on transit wise can be super helpful, both in understanding sort of yourself, kind of getting clarity around what are the things that are important to you and the things that you want to focus on, what are your values, giving you more language for that. And also like sometimes you can just see by transit like, oh yeah, I am going through this thing and it's echoed in the stars and I'm also feeling it down here, or what might be coming up with my like ruling planet during that time. Is there things that I should like be aware of or not? It can make it really, I sometimes think that there is so much going on that you can do astrologically that it feels like that meme of that lady doing calculus, like in her brain. And sometimes the best thing to do is to put blinders on yourself, like a horse, and just like, all right, what's the sun fucking doing for me? Like, I'm a Leo rising, what's the sun doing? Or I'm a Cancer rising, what's the moon doing? Whatever it is, to just, hey, what's that thing that's happening? Does it look gnarly or not? Like, okay, maybe I just need to be nice to myself today. Um, like I was at a wedding and the sun was going over my natal Mars. You know what's not fun for me? Transits to my natal fucking Mars. And I was like, I'm just gonna go take some alone time with some books. And I'm gonna go have a few hours by myself. And it helped. It really helped.
Yeah, you really have to help yourself there, I think. I think I'm still at the level where I'm like not putting a lot like into it, but I'm definitely like taking more notice, right? And so I'm trying not to fall into this like, oh my God, what are the stars doing? right? Like putting that first. I don't put that first, right? I think, oh God, all this shit is kind of like giving me a hard time. I'm gonna go look at my transits and maybe see where I can try and alleviate some of the stress, right? Versus like, it's like almost to put it like an astrological fault line almost where like the tension is like this, but as opposed to a fault line, you can actually like relieve the tension before the earthquake happens, right?
Yeah. I honestly do something very similar where it's like sometimes I'm just like, maybe this is a bad astrologer. I actually don't watch my transits super closely. I might like, I might do a little bit of prep. I'm like, oh, I'm going on a trip. What's going to be coming up then? Or like, oh, I want to be doing this thing around this time. Is there like a better time to do it in that time frame? But like, I gotta live my life. I'm still gonna go out and get coffee during Mercury retrograde. Like, I'm still gonna leave my house and do things. Because let's be real, life's not everything is also about you, which is where the ascendant ruler is also really nice because you can start to see how different planets show up and what is really about you and what is highlighting other things in your life where you're not the main character, because sometimes that's also going to come up. Um, and so like we can talk through an example of that. So like Aries rising, okay? This is a Mars ruled sign. So if you're an Aries rising, Mars rules your ascendant. And the seventh sign from Aries, the seventh sign for your relationships, committed partners, those people is going to be Libra, which means Venus transits are sometimes just about your partner and your relationship. Like Venus retrograde may not actually be about you as like you in relationships, but it might be like there's something going on with your partner that they're having to do a reassessment and review. So sometimes it's nice to be like, this thing is happening and maybe it's messy, but your job in that moment maybe isn't that you have to do something for yourself. It might be like, hey, how do I bring some tender loving care to my partner? How can I just be supportive and show up for them when they're having a gnarly time at work? Um, I kind of love that about astrology because we get so hyper individualistic sometimes.
I think the one nice thing with astrology is it really does kind of like refocus the concept of like the individual in relation to the collective and the collective in relationship to the individual, right? Like
Mm,
you have the planets that sort of represent you. You have the planets that represent the people that are in your close proximity. And then you have the ones that represent that are like the outer world and things like that too. Or like the
yeah,
way that they move represents those things, or the things that they're doing represents those things. And it's not all one thing because I mean, life so seldom is all one thing, right? Like, you know, so seldom can you say, I knocked that water over because I hit it. Well, no, I mean, really, if you want to look at it, and this is the historian and me talking maybe a little bit, right? Okay. They always told us as a historian, you have to choose a starting point or you'll go absolutely batshit. Because if you can't choose your starting point, you'll trace those, you just keep going. You'd be like, wait, there's more, you know. So you knock over a glass of water. Well, what led to you knocking over the glass of water, right? I hit the glass of water. Well, why did you hit the glass of water? Well, I hit the glass of water because I placed it too close to the edge of the table, and I don't usually place it too close to that there. Well, why did I do that? Well, it's because I got distracted by the cat. Well, why did I get distracted by the cat? Well, because I had to feed the cat. Well, why didn't I feed the cat this morning? Well, because this, so I mean, it's a life is a series of freaking chaotic ass events that are like sometimes directed in like you only have control over like the smallest portion of those things, right? Like
truly.
direct control. Sometimes we can have some indirect control, right? And but really like it just goes to like not everything is one, right? Not everything is one. It just
Absolutely.
that's yeah, that's
Yeah.
how I think. It's
Yeah.
great. I love it.
Yeah, I think yes. And the astrology and the cycles, like you have yeah, what charts do you start with? Is it this the starting point or is that the starting point? We could probably, maybe at some point we'll talk conception charts because that's also a whole thing in traditional astrology, which is kind of wild. But at least for now, to keep things simple in our water tossing metaphor, we're going to focus on your birth chart, the moment you were born, and we're going to focus on just the ascendant and the ascendant ruler today. We're not going to really talk about the planets through the signs because that will be forever. But um, take a look not just at your rising sign, but also where that ruling planet is. And we're going to just break it down and kind of give a little bit of prompts and advice to think about that might help you as you're trying to think about what's sort of navigating and motivating for you. Like so many people come to me for readings and they're like they want to know their purpose in life. For me as an astrologer, I can tell you what I think would be like the kinds of questions to ask yourself around what motivates you. And my hope is that you can kind of come away from this episode with some things to reflect on and that will help you answer that for yourself. Astrology, I think, gives guiding lights, but it's not like there's so many ways you can do the same. Like if you are, I don't know, a Leo rising with a Taurus sun, that you would could engage with that as your ascendant and ruling planet and look really different. And that's a-okay. It's about reflecting what works for you and not trying to force you into a pigeonhole. With that small soapbox done, let's talk about Aries rising. Um, this is a cardinal fire sign, right? And it's ruled by Mars. And typically, I love this for y'all. I sometimes look at Aries rising like y'all are crazy, and I could use some more of this in my life because there's just a real courage that these folks tend to embody and a desire to kind of plow ahead into things, rush into things, and so eager to try an idea and think about sort of the details, the problems later, all of the risk factors. There's just something really beautiful about that. And a lot of things begin because of Aries, right? Aries is the sign that starts with the spring equinox. And so, and obviously some of this will be tempered depending on where Mars is in your birth chart. So always please like take a look at that. Caveat, caveat, caveat. But what I love to ask these folks is what do you get fired up about? What is exciting, motivating, and interesting to you? Literally boredom, partly where Aries and Gemini get along, is boredom is the death knell for y'all. And sort of when does courage like something that's really beautiful? And also like when can you acknowledge being reckless? When is the thing that you're trying out have a lot of risk factors for people beyond yourself, right? Sometimes the things we do are going to have impact. You don't always know that going in, but if you have an idea that like you're going to do something and you're going to put a bunch of people at risk, maybe that's when you need to talk to your like Capricorn friends just to kind of get a little balance. Um, and yeah, like think about what gets you excited, what gets you energized as a fire rising sign, and what makes you feel dampened, muted, and bored, are going to be incredibly good emotional indicators around direction. And that can help you as you're trying to kind of get the data to better suss out what works for you and what doesn't. Any thoughts about Aries rising or knowing any Aries risings? Great.
I don't. Oh, do I? Do I know an Aries rising? No, I don't think I do. I know some Aries suns. Love them. Love the
We
sign, really. I really do.
We love an exalted Aries. Like the sun in Aries, chef's kiss, like it's exalted. Tell us all about your lived experience and why you're the best in the comments. All right, let's talk about Taurus rising. This is a fixed earth sign and it's ruled by Venus. And I don't know about you, but I love my Taurus rising friends. They feel so grounded, so chill. One of my besties that I travel with, um, also was the friend that told me that I should get into doing astrology on the internet. So thank you. Taurus rising. And they bring this sort of stability. They bring that sort of slow and steady comfort because those are also the things that they love. These are not people to rush. They know what they like and they want to keep doing it. And that can be really incredible because in some ways they can be so embodied. It can also be really harmful if what they like in their creature comforts don't actually serve them, right? It sort of is the double-edged sword. And that's where I like to get in with them if they're like kind of struggling with change, because when you're, especially the fixed signs, and especially, a Taurus fixed sign, the question is okay, well, how much do you want something different? And are you really willing to give up something that you have in order to get there? You say that you want to get a new job, but you do have to deal with the risk and the uncertainty of applying and interviewing, and the change in your financial situations might be uncomfortable. Are you, how much are you willing to handle that change? Is like an example sometimes, right? So also really depends on where your Venus is for how much you can like handle some of that uncertainty, how grounded and stubborn you are about it.
I'm thinking about Taurus. I'm sitting here just like nodding my head as you're talking, and I'm thinking about how I've always felt this like I wish there were more Taurus or any Taurus placements in my chart other than just, the general housing situation. I wonder, I mean, I haven't checked any of the like smaller placements or anything,
Mm,
but I'm just sitting here going, wow, I always feel that I wish I had more of this. And as a Pisces rising, the things you're saying about Taurus rising feel similar, but in a more earthbound sort of way. We kind of know what we like, and it's not to be, restricted in certain ways, or like the things we're afraid of will pull away for more comfort, but in our own way.
yeah, I would say that like, they're both ruled by, right, by benefics, right? Jupiter or Venus. And so they can be really, they like to say yes to pleasure, right, of different kinds. Um, and we'll get into the Pisces rising. I think Taurus is a little bit different because Pisces is mutable. And so there is some more adjustability and responsiveness it has to sort of things going on around it. Whereas Taurus is kind of more like, well, despite what is happening around me, I will keep the status quo. So if, let's say, you're having a financial shift, you don't necessarily have the finances to go out to this restaurant that you love every week the way that you have previously. In some ways, that's more of a challenge for a Taurus rising because they're so grounded in the habit, and giving that up is hard, right? And so they're going to be thinking about wanting to hold on to that versus, okay, like how do I adjust and or like do that in a way that's once a month, or maybe I do some other like things so I can afford that habit that I really like. And so like what is it that they really value, and like, you know, would you stay in a job to maybe, this is like a more extreme version, but like sometimes staying in a job to have the material comforts that they love, when the material comforts that they love, like going out to that restaurant, is a coping mechanism because they're at a job they hate, right? So it kind of creates a golden handcuff scenario. I tend to see more with the Taurus folks. Every sign has its issues. Um, and so
Yeah,
that's
we all
just,
got our problems.
yeah, we all got our stuff. Um, and the Gemini rising, which is the next one, has its own. It is, if Taurus is stable, sometimes to a fault. Mercury in Gemini doesn't have that stability. It is a mutable air sign, ruled by Mercury, and it is, uh, yes and maybe shoe. Like it's just distracted. It's very easy distracted, right? It's like, the dogs in Up where they're like da 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 ball. That's Gemini. As a Gemini stallion with the Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter here, I get to say this. All right. I'm saying this with love for my people. But once again, um, it has a real youthfulness to it, um, an ability that is incredibly adaptive. These are the kinds of folks that can go from talking in a business meeting in gobbledygook tech speak to being at the bar, and like code switching is just incredibly normal for these folks, in various scenarios. But they are also incredibly restless. Like Aries, boredom is what kills them. They hate to be bored. They would much rather thrive in chaos than be bored. And I think part of it for these folks, and I think especially in an age of like technology and social media, and there's just like all of these things happening, that it's also very easy for these folks to like be a little bit addicted to the technology, be a little addicted to like the constant information influx. And so I think there is a question of like, okay, what's really curious, what's really adaptable and fun, and when are you using that as a distraction, right? When are you doom scrolling? Do you doom scroll? And when are you kind of changing it up to avoid something? Can also be the sort of dark double edge, right? Um, are you really bored, or are you not wanting to go deep on a on an issue with somebody? Or are you trying to avoid that? So, kind of giving yourself some space to ground, giving yourself some space to decompress, giving yourself some, as Mercury retrograde likes to do, reassess and review and be willing to change your mind are all good things. And then, like, maybe think about what helps you be consistent when you need to be. Just some thoughts.
Kind of sounds like you're asking Gemini, are you more dedicated to the analysis than the feeling?
Yeah, and are you more dedicated to stimuli than connection? Stimuli is great, but it's not going to replace depth.
Yeah. And I mean, I would almost ask that of everybody too, of every sign, but in its own way, right? It's really interesting. You know, the more you talk, I'm just like, wow, this is I mean, the rising sign's super rich. It's
There's so much there, yeah. And yeah, like
yeah.
even an adventure is going to have boring periods, right? Even an adventure on an adventure, you still figure out where you're going to get water and where's the tent going to get set up. Like there's boring pieces to anything that you're doing. And there's exciting things to anything. Like you can see it all, you can cut the pie. As somebody with a lot of Mercury and Gemini dominating my chart, I could argue that anything can be boring and anything can be exciting in the right context and in the right perspective. You can fight me in the comments. Would love to see it. But yeah,
I mean, they can
understand.
fight you in the comments, but I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And so we can go on to Cancer, and this cardinal water sign that's ruled by the moon, which also has a lot of evolution, right? As much as people think of Gemini as changeable, it is very trickster. Cancer is some of the most evolution of all the signs. And the Cancer risings, I know, tend to have some of the most like, wait, you were doing what 5 years ago and you're doing what now? Because they're ruled by the moon, which is the fastest moving planetary object we have in traditional astrology, right? It goes through the entire zodiac about once a month, 27 to 29 days, if you want to be really accurate about it. But um, these folks are sentimental, right? They can be incredibly caring and compassionate. If there's anyone that's going to pick up on your emotional wavelength, it is a Cancer rising or people with big planets in Cancer. They can't help it. It's like they smell it or something. Um, and they have an incredible memory. Incredible memory. They'll be like, yeah, remember when we met for the first time at this one diner? I'll be like, we met at a diner? I thought I met you at this thing. And they're like, no, that was the third time we met, and you just kept forgetting me. And I'll be like, so I'm an asshole. I'm so sorry. And they're like, no, I didn't mean that at all. I just really value this memory. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. Thank you. I will now make sure that this is, you have to like make sure that you bucket the nostalgia appropriately. Let me just put it that way. I mean, in the best way possible. I'm like, incredible memories. Wish I had half of that. And
Meanwhile, I'm just like got half my memory capacity. My Cancer moon is just like, oh,
where's the rest of it?
yeah, where to go? Where to go? I'm like, I'm sorry, my brain is like falling through the hole in my head. Like, I can't help you there. Like, I'm sorry. Because yeah, that's a vibe. Cancer ascendants, I feel you. Yeah,
Yeah.
the emotions, my emotions.
Well, and that's the thing about the emotions. And it's like, what does caring really look like for you? Once again, where the moon is really shifts this quite radically. Um, and when are you becoming a martyr, right? When are you denying yourself to focus on others? And a lot of these folks, the pitfall I tend to see with Cancer risings, I adore y'all. I think you're some of like the most compassionate, thoughtful people I know. So giving. But sometimes I think y'all are so used to doing that for others that you can forget to do it for yourself. Or the most harmful version is, well, I do all of this for you. Why can't you do that for me? One, I like to really focus with these folks to be like, we don't all have your superpowers. I wish we did. We don't. And the next thing I like to focus on is saying, like, hey, how do you better ask for what you need? Because people aren't mind readers. And also, to help train people to expect them to ask for what they need so that you're not having to constantly do that. There's a difference if every once in a while you want to extend that to somebody willingly. If you're burnt out and tired and bitter and frustrated, the boundaries are off. And that needs a fix. And that's really what I'm saying is like, are you emotionally feeling like your well is filled as much as you're filling it out? And there's ebbs and flows in that, right? With seasons, with different people in our lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're constantly feeling dried up, tired, and depleted by everybody else, that's what we got to work on.
And also recognizing when somebody's cup has a hole in the bottom.
Amen. Yeah, if your cup is broken, that's what we got to focus on, man. We got to make sure your cup is good. And if somebody keeps coming to using your cup because their cup's fucked up, that's a problem.
Or some people will want you to just pour into their cup and let that run right out the bottom. Or they'll, to for all intents and purposes, you can't see it running out onto the floor, but they're siphoning it off somewhere. And you'll just keep pouring until you're done. You don't do that to yourself. It's
Yeah.
not, yeah. I mean, it's really, I mean, like I said, my Cancer moon, I can really vibe with some of this, but like in an internal sort of way. And it definitely can lead to overgiving and finding the balance between the friend and the martyr, or the lover
Mm,
and the martyr, or the caring, compassionate human being and the martyr, can be really hard and can lead to resentment. So you really have to balance and be careful, especially like, if you're starting to feel angry or frustrated when you're
mm,
starting to give, if you're like, oh yeah, I'll help you with that, and then you're resentful of it, that's when you have to like really reassess that moment and be like, okay, am I angry because you asked? Am I angry because I said yes? Is this coming from you over asking, or is this coming from me over complying? You know what I mean? Like,
um,
in an attempt to really, elicit a response from you that gets you to show love the way I do, which not everybody can do. And that's
yeah,
fine. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that either way, right? The fact that not everybody can show that love and not everybody responds that way. And the fact that you're doing that, there's nothing wrong with it. We just have to always mind ourselves for our behaviors and things like that, and really like be like, whoa, okay, hold on, I'm doing a thing right now. Like I need to take a minute. I need to take a pause and like, really look at where kind of that response is coming from.
um,
And I know it can be really hard for some people. I'm looking at probably like Scorpio and other people, other signs that like to like hide, or feel that maybe like, other people should feel as much as they feel, or in tune, where you're like, I don't understand what you're not picking up from my emotion, right? Like, how do you not hear it in my voice? How do you not see it from what, this? But like we have to like also realize that like people need verbal instruction sometimes, you know.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you brought up a really good point around like resentment is a really good, like your emotions are really good indicators of things to pay attention to. Resentment is a really good one. Anger and frustration are really good ones. And like part of it is like you need to be clear and communicate with people so that people understand, are you really angry about me? Is there something that I'm doing? Is it the situation? Or is it like another thing that we need to talk through? Like giving concrete words is a way to like make sure that people understand really what the emotion is about so that you can help navigate it together, right? Um, and also I think it gives us a humility just because that you can recognize somebody's emotion, asking them about it, checking in with them before jumping into trying to solve it can be a really good moment to remind ourselves that like just because we have empathy doesn't mean we always understand where someone's at.
Yeah, and I mean, like, that's very true. Just because you are empathetic to a situation, I always try to say, I can empathize with you. I don't understand exactly what you're going through, right? And I think too, in being a sign, any sign that feels very like deeply like or picks up on the feelings of others, it's really important to differentiate and really focus on differentiate where feelings are coming from. Are you picking up on a resentment from someone else? Is that resentment or anger or whatever coming from within you? And or is it the general vibe of the world sometimes that is like just like tweaking a hurt in you that is then reflecting on a person with whom it's safe for you to take out your frustrations. So,
Yeah.
just just
The
cancer
easy
things, I
things.
guess. Yeah.
So, Leo rising. I love us as a Leo rising, so I'm a little biased. But I'm willing to dish it as well as hype us up. This is a fire fixed sign, and it is ruled by the sun. Like Taurus, it is stubborn, but it's also very proud. It's very loyal. Um, it can be dramatic, right? There's a lot of like performance seen here. And it's a sign that, a lot of celebrities, a lot of famous people um, will have either as a rising sign or major placements in Leo because there's this desire to be seen, this desire for like public acclaim and visibility, right? The sun's main thing that it does is shine. And so when we think about it like that, there's a lot of magnetism, gravity, but they also can just take up a lot of space, right? The sun is bright, it overshadows anything that's like near it. So there's kind of beautiful things about it, but there's also kind of a double-edged sword. And so for Leo risings, there's a lot I always like to ask folks, when do you feel seen? When, or maybe you noticed and you actually don't feel like it's really validating. I think about this a lot. I remember when I was like first getting online and like sometimes when you're posting things and sharing things, you're not getting a lot of traction, and that can sometimes feel disheartening. And then there's times where maybe you go viral, and that's very exciting that people are seeing your stuff, and it's like this moment that you think you've been really wanting. And on the one hand, I do really want my content on the internet to resonate with folks. And like that's really important for me that it's like helping people effectively understand astrology. But I learned pretty quickly that like there's a difference between content that does well and like me being seen. And when I started to separate those two, I think I actually do better content because I'm a little bit less concerned about the numbers and I'm more focused on like, okay, what's the value? What's the takeaway? What are you going to get from this? And it's less about me because it's really the algorithm and the TikToks and the threads, like they're not, it's me putting out things in the hopes that it supports you. And when I reframe it like that, there's a lot less of my own. I mean, I have ego. Like, let's be real. I'm gonna always have ego. It's a lot less about me, and it's much more about what you need and what supports you. And that I think in a lot of ways is a lot healthier for me. And so that's often what I'm talking about with my Leo. My Leo rising is like, okay, let's look at your sun. Let's look at what feels seen, what makes you feel seen, what makes you feel validated, and like what do we think and socially expect to be social like validation that may actually not serve you based on your chart.
Basically, you're allowed to curate a public image, a slight public image. It doesn't have to be, you vivisecting yourself on the table for the world to see.
Yeah. Yeah. You are allowed to take up space. It's also good as we age to know, what is the space for us to take up and what is the space for us to shut the fuck up and step back. And that balance is an evolving one and one that changes over time. Uh, but there is Leo risings, just due to the nature of the sun, tend to have a magnetism, tend to draw attention to ourselves, whether we want to or not.
I wonder, as opposed to Virgo, is like Virgo quite so visible, or is it more of like a hidden?
Virgo has less of the visibility, partially like the two luminaries are like going to have that brightness, right? So the Cancer risings have it in a much like softer way. There has tended to be more of like people resonating and drawn to them for like comfort and an emotional aspect. Whereas the Leo risings, there's more of like a charisma leadership sort of draw of that fire. So there's sort of that difference, the difference between like a bonfire versus the ocean.
I love that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Tell us more about
But
Virgo.
yeah, Virgo is ruled by Mercury, right? And so this one actually is less of a trickster vibe than Gemini. This is much more of Mercury as the structured, organized thinker. It's a mutable earth sign. So still responsive, still adaptable. But the groundedness of the earth makes Mercury a little bit more practical. Granted, it gives more of a practicality to the sign. Your Mercury can be anywhere, but Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. And these people are
So it's
often,
practical jokes instead of like funny, huh? Yeah.
it's the folks that are like really into the things like structure and systems. They love putting things in boxes of different kinds. And that can be like cleaning a house, but also it could be like structured data or having like informational systems. Like it doesn't always mean that you're a clean freak, but these folks can often be incredibly practical and have a desire to refine and optimize things. There's a kind of reserved mutedness. Keanu Reeves is a great example as a Virgo. I believe he's a Virgo rising. This is one of those embarrassing moments where I'm like, do I
Well,
remember?
I really hope so. Let me look him up though.
Yes.
I'll look up Keanu Reeves. I got no
Okay.
problem
We
with
don't
that.
have the best time chart for him, but even if he isn't a Virgo rising, he has the Sun, Mercury, Uranus, and Pluto in Virgo. So he's very Virgo coded. And
Listen, even if he's in a Virgo rising, can we just pull up a picture of him, take a look for a minute?
um, and he like takes the subway and he tries to be very mindful, like with like taking photos with fans. And there's like a very modest quality to him, like living his life, which is very Virgo coded. Um, what I also like to say to these folks is just because things can be refined and things can always be improved doesn't mean that everything needs to be, right? Sometimes they can get a little too into the self-help, into the practical, into like optimize, optimize, optimize. And I'm like, smell the damn roses for just a minute, just a minute. And this is where some Taurus energy can be really good balance for the Virgos. The Virgos are constantly trying to fix things, and the Taurus is like, just enjoy the garden for 2 goddamn seconds and like take a nap. Um, and so I always love to tell my Virgo friends, like, hey, like, how can you celebrate yourself? Can you celebrate a win for this week, even if it's something that seems small? And two, can you pick something that is can be perfectly imperfect for this moment? And what might that be, right? Get some wabi-sabi um, influences in your life, the sort of Japanese aesthetic of imperfections. I'm sorry, I probably butchered the pronunciation of that because I don't speak any Japanese, but that is my feelings on Virgo and being a Virgo rising in this world.
For my very, very, very basic memory of the Japanese I took in high school, that does sound correct. Because wa is its own, and then B would be like a an alteration on another one, and then there would be Sa, which is that, and then B again. So yeah, that sounds right to me. Also, after, just not that, that's such a, important point. But um, you know, I was thinking about how, that reserved muted quality you were talking about. That is so Keanu Reeves. He has just like this reserved and muted nature to him that is just like you want him to say more, say more. Say more, Keanu. Like not even in
Right.
like a thirsty way, but just like say more. Like I need you to tell me things. You seem like you have secrets and you seem like they're all organized and like the tea is all there. So like I need you to tell me more. You know what I mean?
Yes. May we be so lucky to interview Keanu Reeves one day. Would love it. Gotta dream big. As the Leo, gotta dream big every once in a while for us. Yeah, that's Virgo. Virgo, they're
That's
they're
cool.
delightful. And I just want them to like chill out a little bit more, hang out with my cat, take a nap. Take a nap really is the main thing I tell my Virgos.
Listen, Virgos are wonderful people, but they are very hard on themselves.
Yeah. What we're
Yeah.
saying, Virgos, is that we love you and you're great just as you are. That's all we're saying right now. We want you to have a little bit of self-compassion. I don't think we need to record a closing. I feel like we could just be like, and we're back in different outfits on a different day.
Yeah, that sounds like
Forever.
that. Yeah, that sounds good to me.